So what I wanted to do was to talk about the case study for One Shenzhen Bay. And yesterday, David Malott at the opening meeting talked about how we should really focus on the urban habitat part of CTBUH. And so I would like to talk about the planning principles and the architectural principles of why we did what we did to realize this development. Oh, good. Going through, I'm probably going to repeat some of the growth of Shenzhen, but I think we had to synthesize these ideas in order for us to start. Shenzhen it has grown into this huge megacity in a very short time. In 1979, it was a fishing village of about 30,000 people, and in 37 years, it has grown to be a metropolis of 11.4 million inhabitants. So these are maps showing the growth in decades. The red circle is where our site was, or is. It was a series of villages. And then over time, this is the first decade of development, really, and the roads and development grew in the blue areas. And then in the following years, these areas started to merge. We started the project in 2009. And then from this map, one can really notice where the areas are not blue because of topography and natural landscape elements. These become natural open spaces within the city boundaries. When we first looked at the site on Google Maps, it was still water, and it took a couple of months for it to catch up. But in the Hohai district, because of the prevailing winds, the air is much better than the rest of the city, and so it's a beautiful site with great views across the adjacent public park to the bay and the city beyond. And then to the southwest, there are mountains. So it was we really asked ourselves, what is the identity that we wanted to capture? And there really is no historical typology in Shenzhen because the city grew so rapidly. Also, we found that most people above a certain age were not from this area. It's a city of immigrants. And so there was no nostalgia. There was no sort of memory of a past. But what we found was that there was a great embrace of the future and a desire to live a better life. And so we looked outside of the city, and there's areas of great scenic beauty. There's the mountains, there's the coast, and what could be better than nature? And so we really wanted to incorporate nature into this development so that even in a very dense urban environment, there would be this idea of green space. These are two images that we really found very inspirational. The first one on the left is of a relationship between the inside and the outside, but nature is in contrast to the built environment. The other image also shows this great connection between inside and outside, but it also captures this really great aspect of high-rise living where you're kind of floating out over this amazing view. And so we wanted to really combine these two images. So this was the site when we first saw it. There's 2 blocks, and there's nothing around it. And this is the project view from the bay of what it will be like when it is completed. This was one of the first early planning diagrams that we were given. The yellow are residential buildings, and they were distributed on the 2 sites to best take advantage of daylight. I guess this is a very traditional planning principle. On the southwest is an office building. There were 2 planning ideas that we had to keep. One was this north-south pedestrian passageway through the site, and the other was a northwest visual porosity. So in starting to think about how we would distribute the buildings on the site, the area grew, which was great, but we really didn't want the traditional podium in the middle of the site with a tower on top, and then a little bit of green space around the periphery that really doesn't become much used. And so our strategy was to push as much area as possible towards the edges of the building, of the site. In this way, we could open up the middle of the site to create large green residential gardens. We also felt it was important to promote this idea of pedestrian and a walkable city. In other parts of Hohai that have already been built in 2009, it was very walkable. There was a lot of retail along the streets, and so we wanted to have street edges. We wanted to have retail along those streets, and we wanted it to be very active. So there's 6 residential buildings in yellow, as you can see. There's an office building to the northwest corner, and then the 340-meter mixed-use tower at the southwest with office, hotel, and residential. There's also social elements, club elements in the pink, and hotel ballroom. So we didn't want to bring the public through the middle of the site on the ground level. We wanted to have this idea of street front retail, and we felt that going through the middle of the site would disrupt and discourage the use of sidewalks. So we thought of this elevated pedestrian passageway. And so it's elevated. It would connect the south block with the north block. There would be a southern public plaza right next to the tower, and residential gardens for both of those blocks. This is an early diagram of this idea of the elevated promenade and how it would meet the planning requirements. We also like the idea of being slightly raised in this moment where the street is, so that it would have these amazing views over the park and into the bay. And we were also inspired by the High Line in New York. It's this ribbon of green that weaves through the city, and it's a really nice elevated park, and so we thought we could do something similar. This is another landscape diagram, and as you can see, it was really important for us. It really helped to organize a lot of the spatial planning of the site. This is the elevated walkway. These are the large public gardens. This is the public plaza. And then on these bars, there would be landscaped roof elements, so that this idea of greenery and nature really permeates throughout the site. With the residential gardens, we really wanted a transition from this dense urban environment to your home. And so we thought that it would be nice to go through these gardens, decompress before going up to your apartment. And we felt that this experience really added to the idea of this dense urban living and making it more connected to nature. Also, the idea that a lot of people would be going home by car, and that the car experience shouldn't be this small, dark hole going into a basement ramp. We also wanted the car experience to share this transitional moment. And so the idea was to combine these two. And so here's a picture of the northern residential courtyard garden. The ramp going down really makes this into a sectional place. There's water and sculptural elements, and so it's very calming. And then also looking from above, it's also a really nice social gathering place. Layered upon that is this idea of these bars. We were given 2 blocks, but we really wanted the spatial organization to make it a whole, to be one place. And so we have these east-west bars. They're lower, and they help define the streets, they help define the gardens, and they also serve to have kind of define private residential gardens with a public street, another private residential garden, and the public plaza. So this is north of our site, and this is the Alibaba headquarters today. And so it's kind of nice that this kind of opening up of the inside of the block has been followed by them as well. To the north, this is the retail bar. There's a connection from the street on the the west side, to the elevated promenade. And then this is a view looking down to this bar, which is an amenity club with a large swimming pool and a terraced deck. This is the indoor tennis court here, and the beginnings of the southern residential garden. This is a view of the pool at the top of that residential bar. It's quite spectacular with the views over the bay. This is the tennis court. And then beyond here is the ballroom element for the Raffles Hotel. This is an image of that ballroom element. This is the pre-function space opening out to the public plaza. These are stairs going up to the elevated promenade and retail. So this public plaza is activated by cafes and retail and the entry to the office building. We kept the western buildings more rectilinear to relate to the urban grid. And then the buildings towards the east, towards the lake, is a little bit more irregular. And in this way, we were able to stretch out as much length as possible that opens out to the view. Also, trying to get the view into the buildings as much as possible, We kept the lower buildings to the east, and then the buildings to the west are taller so that they could look over. This is a view from one of the towers on the north side, looking down onto the courtyard, past the buildings on the east to the view beyond. The views to the southeast, or southwest, are also really great of the mountains. And then this is a view from one of the from the eastern balcony, looking back at the city. So we were lucky that a lot of these apartments are really big, and we were able to plan it so that the core and some of the service areas provide privacy from views by the neighbors. All the living spaces, all the master bedrooms try to get the view of the water. So the towers have a relationship to the landscape, these residential courtyard gardens, but each individual unit also has a relationship to the exterior by balconies. So we wanted to amplify the idea of being outside on these balconies by trying to make these where there's a really good view, to have these 2-story balconies by alternating the balconies around the corner. These horizontal elements help guard the upper unit from looking down. And the idea of these courtyards with these balconies opening out onto the view and the water beyond, we wanted to have that be like being on a boat. So this is one of the balconies on the long side around the corner, also with a swimming pool relating to the water. The units, as Mr. Xu was saying, are incredibly decorated by very talented interior designers. They're really large with really large sliding doors opening onto the outside. This is an earlier show suite, and you can see how the exterior space and the interior space really tries to open out onto each other. This is a view from the park of the north side of the apartments, and you can see the alternating balconies on the corner. There's retail in the podium below. And this is a view of the overall complex from the bay. And this is retail at the base. This is a closer up of the retail and how we really try to activate the street and the pedestrian experience with retail. Above the retail are these individual villas or clubs. There's 3 types, and each of them have a different spatial strategy that would try and incorporate greenery and have a relationship to the exterior. The roof of the retail is planted. So the largest villa is at the corner, and it has, all the villas have a direct connection to the garage below, and then elevators up. And so by taking the elevator, it doesn't really matter whether you're arriving at the bottom or the top. And so we wanted the best views to be in the living area. So the living area is on the top floor. The bedrooms are below. And then between them is a private pool with exercise area. The cantilever helps to shade the pool. It also is sheltering this pool from with privacy from the towers beyond. There's 2-story villas. There's 4 of them, and these are much more traditional, with the living areas at the bottom and bedrooms on top. They are surrounded, they have a private courtyard in the middle. So the living space that you see here and the master bedroom up above both have a relationship to the view and to this courtyard area. The third type, there's 2 of these. They're 3 stories, and these also have a courtyard, but the courtyard opens out to the view. There is more casual recreation spaces on the bottom. Taking you up the stairs is the living area, and then above that is bedrooms. So here you see the villas floating above the retail, and then at the corner is the 340-meter mixed-use tower. This is the base of the tower, the entry with the plaza next to it. I have to hurry now because I'm running out of time. This is the lobby with a mezzanine for this double-decker elevators. This is in the middle of the building. This is a very preliminary idea of what the space for the hotel lobby could look like. And then another early rendering of the top of the tower. There's now the helicopter pad. But as you can see, the views beyond are amazing. And then a view from the bridge to Hong Kong. We hope that One Shenzhen Bay will be a welcoming beacon to Shenzhen from this border crossing, and that it would symbolize not only the presence on the skyline, but we really wanted to anchor these high-rise buildings to its neighborhood and to encourage a better sort of neighborhood walking environment at the bottom. So, thank you.